publication of the documents. A few points of interest from this morning. He was very adamant that WikiLeaks had not published first the unredacted diplomatic cables, but had republished it, that they were first published by other media and other outlets. He also was very adamant on some questioning from the prosecution, which the prosecution seemed to be conflating two different redaction and publication processes, the Iraq and Afghanistan war logs and the diplomatic cables. And Mr. Goetz was very adamant that, to his understanding, with regard to the war logs, that those full data sets had not been published ever unredacted. There was some strange questioning towards the end as well, in which the prosecution, Mr. James Lewis, started to get into areas of personality and character of Mr. Assange, which I found a bit unsettling. It was unclear what the purpose of that was, and I think that's something to watch out for in future questioning of witnesses, because that seems, to me, irrelevant to the extradition proceedings, and that has been an issue in the court of public opinion when it comes to this case. There was also an issue regarding the potential introduction of a witness statement from Khaled al-Masri that was a procedural question, but essentially the defense and prosecution have been left to come to some sort of agreement about it. The judge has asked for them to do that by tomorrow. The issue at stake is that although the point of this testimony will be to highlight the impact of the publication of cables, the U.S. government worries that accepting this into evidence will acknowledge that the U.S. government is accepting the allegations of torture in this case. So that is a side issue in this particular case, but obviously one with quite big ramifications elsewhere. Then this afternoon we heard from Daniel Ellsberg, and that was a very powerful testimony. He rejected any sort of attempt to paint the Pentagon Papers in quite a different light to WikiLeaks, and really expressed solidarity with Mr. Assange, with WikiLeaks, viewed the motivation in the cases against both himself and now Mr. Assange as very similar, said that they both shared a sort of political opinion in that they were opposed not just to this government administration, but to all administrations in U.S. history, that their work and their motivation was really in the interest of transparency and openness, and that they felt that the problem was governments keeping things secret. He viewed some of the things that were exposed by WikiLeaks in their publications as similar to what he exposed in the Pentagon Papers, and expressed strong solidarity in that regard. He also refuted the allegations that anyone has experienced actual harm as a result of the publications. He said that in his experience in publishing the Pentagon Papers, that he was told at the time, you'll have blood on your hands, and that people were wrong, and he views that as very much similar to what's happening now to Mr. Assange. So that was the substance today. There were fewer technical difficulties than in previous days. Sometimes in the overflow court we're getting a bit of reverberation, sometimes the audio cuts or the video cuts, but today was much easier to follow from a technical perspective than in previous days.
Have you been in correspondence with the courts to get a link back, or organized with Amnesty and the other groups concerning getting virtual access to this proceedings?
So we continue to have access problems as non-governmental organizations. So Reporters Without Borders is collaborating with other NGOs such as Amnesty International that have been affected. But we have, instead of continuing to pursue meaningless correspondence with the court at this point, because they stopped responding at a certain point last week to this, we have focused on finding ways to get into court, which has not been easy. So we have managed to gain access to part of each day's proceedings so far, and that is thanks to support from others, including some really kind grassroots activists who are getting up and queuing from the very early hours to make sure that we're able to get in and comment on what's happening. So I want to make that clear. The access issues have not been resolved. We're only able to get in due to a combination of tactics to ensure that some of these very few public gallery seats are made available. But on that point, I want to note the court is still holding back 3 spots every session for 3 VIPs who apparently are named. The court knows who they are. We don't know who they are. We're now at the end of day 7. These VIPs have yet to materialize. But yeah, each session, 3 spots out of 5 that are being allocated to members of the public, which includes NGOs, because the court won't distinguish us as different. 5 spots are allocated. So 3 of those are held back each session. In the morning, which tends to start at 10 a.m., usually it's 11:30 by the time they'll allow 3 other members of the public into those seats when the VIPs don't show. In the afternoon, which normally starts at 2, it's usually 2:30 p.m. that then those spaces are made available. So this is time that members of the public who are interested, who are here, some of whom have traveled from other countries, who are queuing from the wee hours, are not able to access the court, and they're being held for no shows. So my question at this point is this, not only who are these VIPs, but if they are VIPs, why can they not be accommodated elsewhere? Why do they have to take up the very few spaces in the public gallery, and particularly when they're not coming? So what that meant this morning for 3 activists who had queued is that they missed the entirety of John Gutz's testimony, and those seats were empty in the public gallery, which is really shameful when this is supposed to be a trial held in public.
What does this say about the Crown Prosecution Service concerning, the importance that this case has and the lack of openness that they seem to have towards and collaboration just towards observers?
The way that many aspects of this have been handled has been extremely frustrating, and is not what I would have expected from what I would have viewed as a very robust legal system. We are a mature democracy, we are a country bound by the rule of law, and we should be getting it better. Some of the technical aspects of this have fallen short of things that we've witnessed in other countries, even developing countries, that seem to have invested a bit more in ensuring that judicial proceedings go smoother, even if we're talking about show trials in countries like Turkey. Okay, and it's not just this this few weeks here in September. This has been the case before in other aspects of Julian Assange's case. With administrative hearings over the past 6 months, there has been a series of problems. In February at Woolwich Crown Court, although we did not have the COVID factor at play yet then, there were a number of issues with access with several aspects of the trial then too. So I've said it this way, and I'll say it this way again. I think many of these things at face value, in and of themselves, could be individually explained away, but the cumulative impact is that it is extremely difficult for anybody wishing to follow this case. And at this point I have to question, is that just a matter of competence, or is that intentional? Because it feels like to me, as somebody who did queue every morning in February to get into Woolwich Crown Court, and somebody who's been doing her best to get in, to as much as I can of this week's and last week's proceedings, it feels to me like it is intentionally being made as difficult as possible, that we are being made to feel uncomfortable, unwelcome, that aspects of us being able to do our jobs as professional NGO observers are being impacted, and every day there's moving goalposts. So to me, at this point, I will say it definitely feels deliberate. I don't know at who's bidding, but I hope that that those with the power to improve things will do so, because the world is watching, and even if the world cannot be in this courtroom, that's what we are doing there, and we will speak loudly and repeatedly until this is acknowledged by our government.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you very much.
Super.
Thank you.